A few years ago, after the death of his grandmother, a friend of mine found a small wooden box full of colour 35mm slides. The slides turned out to be the record of his grandmother's honeymoon in August of 1939. The couple had travelled up and down the country in their Morris 8 car, and they captured a rare glimpse of a UK and a way of life that was about to be forever changed by war. The pictures were fascinating and very enigmatic, like the past staring back at you. And it got me thinking, what would happen if I took a camera from that time period and put some modern film through it? Would I take similar pictures to our grandparents? Or would it just be another Lomo camera in the hands of a modern photographer? So this is the Kodak Brownie, or the Kodak Box Brownie. It was introduced by Kodak in 1900, and it's basically a cardboard box with a meniscus lens on it that took 2¼ inch pictures on 1/16 roll film. 1/16 roll film is slightly larger than the 120 that we have today. They were introduced by Kodak in 1900, and they were the first mass-produced point-and-shoot camera. In 1900, this would have set you back a grand total of $1, which is roughly $30 in today's money, and they managed to sell 150,000 of these cameras in the first year. They were invented by a man called Frank A. Brownell, and they were named after the spirits in the Palmer Cox cartoons, which were called brownies. To use the brownie, you load it up with film, you look through one of the viewfinders, you have a portrait viewfinder and a landscape viewfinder, and then you would simply press the shutter, which you have here, and then you would use this on the side, turned anti-clockwise, to wind the film on, and you would see the number of the frame you're on printed on the back here in this little window. You have an iris control here, which is simply a hole drilled in a piece of metal that gives you f16, f22 and f32. On the shutter you either have a time exposure of whatever you want it to be until you turn it back off again, or you have 1/50th of a second. So loading these cameras is relatively straightforward, except for the fact they were designed for 1/16 film and not 120. The first thing we have to do is open the clip on the top, clip on the side, and then pull up and disengage the wind-on mechanism. At that point, the camera will just slide open. On the bottom we have the take-up spool, and on the top is the space where you will load your film. Now you'll probably notice as soon as you put your film in here that it doesn't fit, it's too small. So in order to combat that, you need two small 1 centimeter tubular spacers. I've used brass, you can use plastic, that will fit neatly into the film spool. So place your film spool into the camera, pull these tabs open, gently put it into place, and your film will sit neatly where it's meant to. Once the film is in, gently pull it round over the film gate and onto the take-up spool. Put the tab in the hole and then wind it on a couple of turns by hand, anti-clockwise. And when you're about right, you will see the start mark just starting to appear over the gate. With this done, the back of the camera back on, re-engage the wind on and the two clips, and then wind the film on anti-clockwise until you see the number 1 appear. And that means that you have loaded your film and you are now on the first frame and ready to take a picture. The images did have a lot of the vintage feel we were looking for, but there were some problems, and they weren't quite what we wanted. The most major problem was that all the images on the roll of film overlapped each other slightly, and this is caused by the numbers on the back of the 120 film that correlate to the various different camera sizes, having the one for this camera on the right hand side, whereas the number for the 6x6 2¼ square camera on the left hand side. Now the window for this camera is on the left hand side, so whenever you read the numbers, you're reading the numbers for a smaller film gate than this camera actually has, which means all of the images will overlap each other. And the only way to fix that is to move this window from this side to this side, which is some fairly major surgery on a 100-year-old camera. The other problem is that the window itself is very transparent, so it lets through enough light to actually expose the film through the paper at the back, which means it was actually printing the film numbers onto the pictures that we were taking. So that's not quite ideal. So what I've done is I've ordered a couple of newer 1950s 120 Kodak Brownies, and next week I'm going to take them out and see what results I get with them. So if you'd like to be notified when that video comes out, you can subscribe and press the bell icon, or you can see more of my work on Instagram or on my website.